Well, this episode of the TT Bug Jaws, as you know, we're doing this front engine. I had to take 3 shells and morph them into one shell to accommodate the front engine and the Turbo 400 that we're stuffing up front. Most bugs, obviously, actually like all bugs except for a couple, have the motor in the rear. I stretched it 12 inches in the front windshield and then 10.5 in the rear because of the contour of the body. The front door, I went 8 inches longer with the center section out of another chassis or another shell where I cut it right in front of the door handles, and then the next one I cut 8 inches in front of that and then splice it in there, and also added a 4-inch section to the rear quarter window. The first step after I got that completed a while back was to scan it with Fiberworks. Kevin got with, what was his name?
Jaime.
Well,
yeah, Jaime is the 3D engineer over there.
The 3D engineer.
Jason McNeil hooked us up with him. He brought over his scanning system to our shop. And as you can see, this is the result of what about, I don't know, it's about an hour and a half of scanning did and processing, and now we have the full
Megabug,
whatever you want to call it, Bugzilla shell,
Jaws shell
on the computer, and this is the basis for the start of all the CAD work to design the chassis. So everything is built around the scan of the shell that Blake Frankenstein together.
So this is now where Kevin's expertise took my dream, my idea, and actually made it into a chassis. He's gonna go in depth a little bit about the engineering behind it and what we had to do to make everything accommodate this shell. For me, it's rocket science that I do not know. For him, it's a walk in the park. So take it away, Kevin. This is your baby now, dude.
Computer's loading, technology issues.
Technology issues, just like a couple other episodes we've had to deal with, but we're getting to it. I'll talk about some parts while it's loading. We're running Big Dog King coilovers at 3-inch coilovers front and rear, 4.0 front bypass, and a 4.5 King Kong rear bypass. The Pyrotech fuel cell is going to hold about 75 gallons. Roughly, depending on how much the bladder consumes. It's about an 80-gallon volume, but we'll probably lose close to 5 maybe of that. And boom, we're loaded.
Check it out. So here we go. Here's the chassis, fully naked. All the suspension on it.
What kind of wheel travel numbers are we pulling up front?
In the front, we're looking at about 24 inches of wheel travel.
Boom.
Fully cycled. In the rear, we got about 32.
32.
Cambered rear end housing. Cambered hubs. Wilwood brakes. All the good stuff. So this is going to be our custom Pyrotech fuel cell. Pretty simple in design, but should be about 70-75 gallons filled up. Dry brake system.
So the new redhead valve that'll accommodate both a dry brake system and a standard pump from the gas pump if need be.
So all the basic geometries were taken into account, like roll centers, anti-squat, you name it. Motion ratios are all right. We talked with SDG Shocks, suspension tuning, who tune a lot of the trophy trucks, high-end race cars out there. I got with them on motion ratios to make sure that was all right. As far as all the other geometries too, just because we want this thing to be a one-shot, one-kill and be right the first time. So we took the time, we did the research, and we did the legwork to make sure everything was going to be spot on. So we're going to have a high-end race car that's gonna be competitive with everybody else.
So like Snore and Best in the Desert and all them, they have a pretty set standard of structure that needs to be a certain diameter and thickness because of the speeds, the G-forces, and all that stuff that people can build in these things. If you do happen to roll this thing at 120 miles an hour, those are things that they take into account for structural integrity and just the level that the sport has accelerated to, and the speeds that a lot of these top tier guys are going. That's kind of mandatory. So I mean, she can literally go in there and highlight the tubes and see which different tubes are different sizes and thicknesses, which is pretty cool. Boom.
You can check this out. So here's just the basic chassis overview. You can see different colors represent different tube sizes and thicknesses, just to make it visually easy to see as I'm working on it and working on the design process. It also makes it easy when you go to export everything. You can select the different colors you want, and you know that you're getting which tube you're getting. So
assembly, that's going to make it very easy for us.
Yes. Also, we'll definitely be heavily referencing this drawing as we assemble the whole chassis. Like we mentioned earlier, we have part numbers laser edged on all the tubes, so I can come back in here and match everything up, and we know where everything goes. There's no questions, and there's no guesswork.
Also, shout out to Craig Hall with Hall Designs. He gave us the Turbo 400 reference. We're using a reed case. We have a Fortin underdrive, which we'll be using as well in this. And you can see all the engine plates right now without the motor and transmission in there. You can see all the engine plates highlighted in this teal color where it'll bolt to. So we have a front plate, we have a mid-mount plate, and then we also have the rear Fortin underdrive plate right there. That was all cut out as well by precision tube laser out of half-inch thick 7071 aluminum.
You can check it out again. Now we got engine installed.
Ooh, it's so sick. It's crazy how realistic it looks. It's like
Fortin underdrive. Drive shaft is all in there, mocked up for plunge and angles. So everything's accounted for in virtual space before we actually build it. So any problems that we would account or have to come across, like building it by hand, cycling suspension by hand and changing angles and stuff, it can all be done on the computer, and it just saves a lot of time and man hours, physical labor, as opposed to doing it all by hand like the way that we used to do it. So huge step in streamlining the build process.
Streamlining it, duplicating it, fixing it, because shit happens when you're racing and when you're pushing the envelope. So I mean, now it's a matter of fact where we need to TT3B, or we can just basically print out a list of the front half of the truck, the back half of the truck, send those to our partners.
Door bars, if anything. If we ever have any kind of incident where we roll or wreck, or we have a collision with somebody and we need to repair part of the truck, it makes it super easy to pull out, we find the damaged tubes and find the part numbers, we send them out, and they can be cut out within a week, and we'll have it back together in a pretty short period of time. So
another cool thing is where a lot of trucks and a lot of other vehicles, you see failure points or stress points is in the rear pickup of the lower arms. So the bulkhead and the bulkhead for the entire front end is so stout, and it ties into a ton of the chassis. Check this out.
So this is the whole bulkhead section where the arms mount, and this is where it comes through the chassis tubes, and you can see there's a lot of plate work to tie it all together. These bolts actually come through this center section, and it helps hold everything together that way.
We have weld washers, where weld washers need to be placed on those high impact pivot points. A weld washer is basically something that welds to the outside of the tab, and it creates a lot more thickness there for the tab to prevent itself from ovaling out. time and time again on cars that see heavy abuse, older cars that aren't shanked properly with the right bolts. You just see those start to oval out. So weld washers, as you can see on the drawing, are placed in many spots where there's going to be a lot of load as it's cycling. Pretty much all the suspension pivots are mandatory, and then some of the select shock pivots as well. Overlays, these overlays that are on the bulkhead and also on the rear pivot boxes, these are just beautiful. It does create a lot of extra welding, but it's just so stylish, and it actually does perform a function.
Yeah, and the advantage of doing the overlays is you can start off with lighter plate work, but when you double it up, you can add strength to the areas that you really need it, and then not add the extra weight where you don't need it. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility with the design. Instead of just running 1/4 inch plate on the whole design, we can do 1/8 inch plate and then double it up where we really need that extra strength and save some weight that way, and looks a lot cooler too.
This motor doesn't have the Magnuson supercharger that we're going to run on our Texas Speed 427. It's a big unit. It's a 2650, and we've pretty much mapped it out, and she should fit. If she doesn't fit, then we're gonna.
Oh, it'll fit. We got plenty of headroom there to fit that sucker in there.
It's a big dog.
The motor sits super low in this chassis. We literally went as low as we could get it with a shallow oil pan. It helps to line up the drive line better, keeps the center of gravity lower. Basically, all advantages when you mount the motor as low as possible. So.
More foot room, more clearance in the interior section of the cab. This thing is going to be a mean machine. We're estimating it wet or dry. We're estimating it at roughly 5,600 pounds. That's just the weight of these things with big shocks, big parts, big components, and the weight. I wanted to make it really light for like sand stuff, but you know, to follow those spec rules and whatnot, you do have to have a lot of meat and structure where it's needed. And the big shocks, it just accumulates, and that also helps through some of the more hard packed big holes in like Barstow or Mexico or any of these big races, to where the holes are getting so deep now, even with the 40-inch tire, they're still just massive. So the weight will actually help keep the car planted instead of kind of pogoing around.
Yeah, at the high speeds that these things are going now, the extra weight does help keep the car more stable and planted. It helps the suspension to work better and keep the actual chassis level, to have that extra weight. So it's kind of finding a balance between you want to keep it still as light as you can, but you still want to have the strength, and you're limited to how light you can make it because of the types of components that we have to put on these things that are able to hold up to the abuse that we put them through. So with that said, yeah, we're hoping to be under 6,000 pounds with it, which is 6,000 pounds is right about like the 2-wheel drive trucks. That's right about where they're at. I know Bryce Menzies all-wheel drive trucks like pushing 7. Like they're heavy trucks.
I'm just
but this one without the 4-wheel drive drivetrain and a little bit smaller package, we should be able to keep it around 6, under 6. Is the goal. So
hopefully she's not too big of a dog in Glamis, because I definitely want to take her there and send some shit, but is what it is. You know, we're doing it right. We don't want to have to come back and fix anything because we tried to skimp out on a little bit of plate work here or there, a couple tubes here and there. So
it's not worth saving a couple pounds to, you know, and losing some strength or losing a little bit of security in the chassis, you know.
Absolutely.
I'd rather have the extra strength that is going to hold up in the long run, and we're not going to have to repair cracks and make changes to it later.
Let's show them the final product with the Gladiator tires.
All right.
With the shell on it, and kind of what you guys can expect to see after Fireworks gets that body done. And I'm gonna run the steel cab on mine, just because I think it'll be pretty epic to have something that's basically a trophy truck with a steel cab, working doors, and a bug. But we're gonna make these fiberglass Fiberworks bodies available to the public once they're done, and we get those pretty much ironed out. The process has begun. It's just time and materials now, but check this bad girl out.
Ooh. So this is what we're shooting for with the final product. Fiberworks is going to do the hood and the rear fenders. This is kind of just a mock-up. It's not really a final design yet, but it's for reference to get a visual idea of what we're shooting for in the end. Obviously the big Gladiator 40-inch tires make the thing look super gnarly.
It's also so proportionate looking, you know. I mean, with how wide this thing's gonna be sitting at what, 90 or 92?
The front's gonna be 92, the rear's like 90. So I usually make the rear end about an inch narrower or so to account for the scrub on the front end, because when the front end cycles with the A-arms, you lose a little bit of track width as it travels up and down. So I don't want the front end to ever be narrower than the rear end. So I usually will add a couple inches to the front end, so when it cycles and you lose a little bit of track width, it ends up being the same as the rear.
And then our wheelbase is going to be what, 122 or 123?
It's right around 123.
123
for the length.
From hub to hub.
It's just kind of normally typical trophy trucks around 125. The way the chassis design, the layout, it just kind of it fit a little bit better to be a little shorter. And I know Blake's used to driving shorter vehicles anyways.
I wanted it like 118, but it's not.
The problem with
as ideal, but
yeah, it's not as ideal. You lose the straight line stability, and when the wheelbase is too short, the cars get stuck like in between whoops. It's harder to keep them on top. At least that's what I've heard from guys that tune. The longer wheelbase it's the spacing of the whoops and the size of them. It's just if you go under that, it just makes the car squirrely and harder to control.
I wanted to be able to rotate it like I do my buggy and just like whip it around, but I mean, that's what the buggy's for. This thing's gonna be more for just hard pack machine, high flying, big holes, just a completely different animal than what I'm used to with Megalodon and the Class 11 Slug Shark. Ooh, those PRP seats too, ooh, in there. We're also running a Howe 2 3/4 rack. That rack's a pretty penny, the TT rack. It's a hydraulic ram assist. Some guys use steering boxes. This is kind of a little bit of a simpler steering setup. You get a little bit more feedback through the wheel, but all in all, it's still super strong, and it's a little bit more simple setup with less moving parts.
Still proven, still works.
Yep.
Just as well.
Yep. It's some people like apples, some people like bananas. I like them both, but I got an apple.
Yeah, banana.
Yeah, and a banana. But this thing's gonna be sweet. Once again, leading up to this, we've showed kind of the whole process, and this whole chassis is built off of industrial metal supply material, all the 4130. Shout out to those guys for getting on board, and just everyone who's been a part of this so far, and we're looking forward to more endeavors. But this is a little behind the scenes look at the chassis and some of the other methodical things that Kevin brought to life, and then I just added a little 2 cents here and there from just our lives of being off-roaders and in the scene. We're both blue-collar dudes out of our parents' garages, just trying to make this shit work, and it's gonna be a dream come true when this thing fires up and we get to take her for the first test drive and show the world what we're capable of building in-house.
Hell yeah, man. Stoked for the opportunity to build such a rad car with you, dude.
And not only are we building one, but we're building two, if you forgot. Yeah. show some love. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever you guys might want some more info of. We'll keep these episodes rolling. Check out the new gear. We got a whole bunch of stuff on shreddylife.com, steering wheels,
Threads, check it out.
shirts, all the good. And we appreciate you guys for watching. Hopefully you learned a little something and you guys got to see a behind the scenes in-depth look of the chassis design by Kevin with Quixotic on Jaws.
Yeah, this is some super behind the scenes stuff, man. Not many people get to see this. So
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah, and the full details. Like, yeah, we're excited. So thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode. Not exactly sure what that's going to be yet, but it's going to be bad.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Later.
Well, welding parts. It'll be
More
putting
lots
these
of welding.
parts together. After, since we already have them cut and we're kind of going backwards now to the design, we've already started the series. The next part is going to be putting these parts that were laser cut out.
69,000 hours of welding.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.